Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second industry talk. My name's Ben Hutchins-Morant. I'm the head of global exams at WSET, and I've been with WSET for almost 3 wonderful years. I'd like to welcome all of you to our second industry talk. Can I remind you, please feel free to pop any questions into the Q&A slot. And also, though, as we all settle in, could I invite anyone to pop into the chat where you're joining us from today? We're expecting quite a global audience. It'd be lovely to see where some of you are from. First one there, Pippa Rankin is from Manchester. Oh, there we go. We're up and running now. I'll leave you guys to have a little look at that. That's a nice little distraction as we settle in. So a little bit more about WSET and what we do. We are the Wine and Spirits Education Trust, and we're the world's leading provider of wine, spirits and sake qualifications. Our courses have been designed to inspire and empower anyone that's looking to develop their knowledge of drinks. We cater for everyone from beginners to experts and from enthusiasts to professionals in the industry. We offer 4 progressive levels of study through an extensive network of course providers that spread right across the globe in more than 70 countries, and our qualifications are translated into multiple languages. WSET qualifications are globally recognised as an international standard in wine, spirits and sake knowledge. And for more information about those, or to locate your nearest course provider, please visit wsetglobal.com. Why are we here today? As I mentioned, we're at the second of our new industry talk series, and we're delighted to be hosting these conversations that are looking at trends and important topics impacting the global drinks industry. Each session brings together experts from across the industry and allows them to share their perspectives as part of a healthy discussion, empowering our audience with takeaway knowledge and key learnings. This year's programme will explore environmental impact, changing drinks habits, sustainable business practices, and how to create a more accessible and diverse drinks industry. Please note this session will be recorded and it will be available to watch via WSET's Global Events Hub on our YouTube channel. And just a quick reminder, as I mentioned earlier, please pop any questions that you have into the Q&A box, and we'll try to cover as many of those as possible. I'm now delighted to hand over to the chair for today's panel discussion, Laura Richards. Laura is the editorial director at Club Oenologique at IWSC, and we're thrilled to be collaborating on this talk with them as IWSC are a WSET partner. Laura is the editorial director of Club Oenologique, and they are the sister publication to the IWSC, and their purpose is to connect readers to the joys of the world through the lens of wine, spirits, and other interesting drinks. As a journalist and author, Laura has been writing about drink and the culture that surrounds it for over 10 years, lots of knowledge there, and documenting key shifts in drinking trends as they happen. She was formerly Time Out London's drink editor, and in 2017, her first book was published. And that wonderful book is 111 London Pubs and Bars That You Shouldn't Miss. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you to WSET for hosting today's exciting session. We have a brilliant panel of leading experts joining us today from around the world, who I will introduce you to you shortly. Today, we're discussing a subject that has probably been on a few people's minds just recently. We've just emerged from dry January, and here in the UK, figures indicate a record number of abstainers or drinkers curious to sample what's on offer from a booming no and low alcohol market. In fact, supermarket giant Tesco reported a 10% spike in its sales of no and low beer, wine and spirits when compared to the January previous. But it's not just a January concern, of course. Sales around Christmas time were also at an all-time high for the festive period this year. If we take a more international view on things, the momentum for mindful drinking seems even clearer. The latest drink market analysis from the IWSR shows that around 1/5 of consumers of no alcohol drinks were new entrants to the category in 2023. In leading markets, it documents a shift in attitudes to moderation too, with consumers in certain age demographics more likely to switch between no and low and full-strength beverages when drinking, a term that, in certain circles, has come to be known as zebra striping. Based on its figures, the IWSR even predicts that no alcohol drinks alone will take up a total of 4% of the alcoholic drinks market by 2027. So, what will this rising fan base be drinking exactly? For the IWSC's No and Low Awards, the biggest competition of its kind in the world, entries have increased by 152% over the last 3 years, demonstrating the uplift in what's on the market. The number of medals awarded to no and low entries has also increased by 167%, showing the ongoing rise in quality. The awards continue to expand with new categories each year as the no and low alcohol scene diversifies. These days, mindful drinkers not only have beer, sparkling wine, and alcohol-free gin to select from, they have switchels, kombuchas, sparkling teas, botanical spirits, bitter aperitifs, functional beverages, ready-to-drink cocktails, and a whole host of other liquids to explore. It's fast become one of the most inventive and innovative sectors of the drinks world. With all of this in mind, I'm joined by an expert panel today to explore the rise in mindful drinking and the booming no and low alcohol market. We'll be discussing shifts in consumer habits, along with the challenges and opportunities that these changes in drinking patterns present. So let me introduce you to our panel. First up, we have Aneesh Bhasin, co-founder of Svami Drinks, a company crafting mixers and non-alcoholic drinks for adults. As well as founding Svami, Aneesh is a speaker on all things wine and spirits and has been named as one of GQ's 30 most influential young Indians. Next, we have Dan Jansen, commercial director for Everleaf Drinks, a range of award-winning non-alcoholic aperitifs inspired by the natural world. Dan has worked in the drinks industry for over 20 years in a range of senior sales, marketing, and brand building roles, from startup businesses to large multinational companies such as LVMH and Pernod Ricard. Next up, we have Laura Willoughby, MBE, founder of the world's largest mindful drinking movement, Club Soda. Club Soda also runs its new no and low tasting rooms in London's Covent Garden. Among the many accolades, Laura was named number 16 by Drinks Retailing in its recent ranking of the top 100 most influential people in drink. And then finally, we have Irem Eren, who is business director for BevZero, a company that provides equipment and solutions to the no and low alcohol market. Irem has international experience across the wine industry, acts as an educator and a judge, and is studying to become a Master of Wine. She was also awarded the Emerging Talent in Wine Award by IWSC in 2022. So what I'd like to do is dive right in and hand it over to our panel of experts, first touching on trends among consumers before we delve deeper into challenges and opportunities that the drinks industry may be facing in light of these behaviours. And finally, we'll open it up to the audience and your questions. So if you do have any burning questions for our panelists today, please go ahead and add them to the Q&A tab as we go along. Okay, so it's fair to say that we're seeing mindful drinking extend way beyond dry January. But in what ways are we seeing consumers drinking more mindfully year round? And I'm going to put that question to Dan first.
Great. Dan finds mute button on Zoom. Apologies, and hello everyone. That felt a bit like the pandemic, didn't it? So thank you for the question. Personally, I'd quite like dry January to go away entirely. Maybe a controversial view. I know that when I visit other countries around the world, the Belgians celebrate dry February because it's a shorter month. So smart move from the Belgians there, although this year it's obviously 1 day longer. But for me, non-alcoholic or low alcoholic drinks should be part of everyone's repertoire all year, available all year, something that you can choose whether you're moderating on an hourly, weekly, daily, monthly, whatever basis, and just something that's quite normal. So I thought the introduction was really interesting, that we could aim to get to 4% by 2027. That would be an enormous gain in volume, but it nowhere near reflects the percentage of people who are looking for non-alcoholic drinks. So yeah, I think there's a really interesting discrepancy there.
Okay, and Laura, can I put that to you in the question? Yeah. Do you want me to repeat?
I mean, it's interesting what Dan says, because of course, January's always been a quiet month in the on-trade, not because people were shifting drinking, but because people spent too money in December and normally had a health goal. And so sometimes we ascribe all of the behaviours in January to dry January, when actually they're often about saving money, getting fit, and other motivators. There's some data from Tesco's last year that showed that they sold more alcohol-free in June than they did in January. So I definitely think that this is a shift that is all year round. It's just that, you know, it makes good news headlines in January, and it's a month that we've learned to pin all sorts of stories on. And I guess from what we're seeing in the shop is the biggest purchasers of alcohol-free are people who are still buying alcohol. So this isn't a story about sobriety or sobriety in a particular month of the year, but it's a story about moderation and people shifting their habits. And also the supermarkets have shown that people who buy the most alcohol-free are also buying alcohol in their online shopping baskets as well. So it's really important that we understand that there's lots of different motivations in this group of consumers, and that they've got a lot of different behaviours that go alongside that, depending on where they've decided to fit alcohol and no alcohol into their diet.
Right, Irem, do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with Laura and with Dan. And from also, I mean, I've been in this industry for a while, and the no part, excuse me. So what we see also here is, like, in the beginning or in the early stages of this movement, it was seen, I mean, no alcohol was a sacrifice for those needed to abstain from alcohol for maybe health, religious reasons, or other reasons. But today, I think these products or the category is often associated with a rite of passage or a badge, like into independence and responsible lifestyle. And it's simply blended into one's life, and it's a drive to modify a lifestyle. So I think it's, again, what Laura was and Dan was saying, it's way beyond than dry January or dry July or stop October. This is a lifestyle. And I think we are still just seeing the tip of the iceberg. This is just the beginning, and it's gonna, you know, as you said in the beginning from the reports, it's the demand is growing.
Fantastic. And Aneesh, do you have anything to say on that point?
I completely agree with everyone, and I don't know how much more to add to that, but I also think drinking in moderation is cool. You know, I think we're also getting into an era where binge drinking is not necessarily cool, which, you know, there used to be a time when people would pressurize you to do a shot and you would do that. And I think right now moderation is very cool. And that's good to see, because in India, at least, if you did not consume alcohol at a party or you drank less, somewhere people would mock you. And I think that's really starting to change, and that's very encouraging.
That leads me on quite nicely to my next question, actually. Reports kind of tend to indicate that millennials and Gen Z are a real driving force behind this trend. Is that something that you agree with, Aneesh?
Oh, completely. We're seeing that. Again, I'm going to give you a lot of my experience out of India. And we're in a very interesting place because we're the largest population in the world. And we have a very large audience that drinks alcohol and a very large audience that doesn't drink alcohol. So we have both target markets that Svami caters to. And we're seeing lesser, or rather moderation in this space across the board. And definitely Gen Z is not drinking as much as we did. That's a very visible shift.
Laura, could I just jump in and add to that? So,
Absolutely.
I mean, what we've seen from data is that, and let's be clear straight away, I'm not anti-alcohol. I'm a very proud holder of WSET diploma in wine, and I've spent a lot of time drinking mindfully, enjoying lots of different products. So let's just clear that one off straight away. But if you look at the kind of data, I'm just looking at a report from Slow Futures, which I can drop the link into the trend, into the chat. Alcohol is trending slightly down overall, but it's when you dig beneath that surface and you look at the different cohorts within it. My dad's generation are propping up that number, and the 16 to 24s coming through are drinking far less in a really meaningful way. So yes, overall trend is slightly downwards, but I think if you look at that younger generation coming through, they don't see the point of all of the things that people used to do with alcohol. They don't want to be out of control. They don't want to look stupid. They don't want to have the lost day the next day. So yeah, for a number of reasons, I think that cohort is definitely leading things.
It's really interesting because what you've got is a cross-generational shift, but different figures within it and different motivations within it. So those in the over 60 cohort, and it is that the top 10% drinkers drink most of the alcohol in the world anyway, but the older drinkers are changing their habits partly because they've been given medical reasons to. So often type 2 diabetes and other medical conditions, they start to cut down their drinking, more likely to pick up what they find in a supermarket, and not so worried about exploring the category. My age group, so I'm in the ladette generation, we're the generation of women in particular that hit wine very hard for a whole host of reasons, which I could bore you with at another time. But we don't want to lose the occasions where we drank. We still want to create those same experiences we had, but with something different that makes us feel like we're having the same experience, but doesn't give us all of those negative side effects. We're used to the taste of alcohol. Younger people, particularly in the Generation Z, they've never learned to like alcohol in the first place. And if they do, they tend to drink less. They're very interested in cocktails because cocktails are an experience. They look great on Instagram, but a pint of beer, glass of wine doesn't look so good on Instagram. So they're very much more experience-led in the entertainment they see. Alcohol isn't the main focus of their evenings out, and they're not necessarily looking for mimics or replicas or tastes that are associated with alcohol, like strong bitter taste. They probably have a sweeter palate. They're far more interested in cocktails that are part of their evening out. So what you've got is cross-generational, but different motivations, different tastes, different modalities of when, why, what, and what they're drinking. But alongside that, and just to add to the point that Dan said, it does mean that when people, if they are moderators and they're choosing to drink, they are trading up when they do drinks. They're buying more premium alcohol and drinking the drink they like the most with the people they like the most in the place they like the most. So as I'd say, it's special is where they're going. So it's really important not to treat this as a cohort of sober people, but to see this as a whole mix of people with different experiences of drinks, different occasions they're trying to replicate, and different experiences where drinks may not be the focus of that attention. And I think that's incredibly fascinating, and there's tons more digging to do in all of that.
I also want to add one thing. When we were creating our products, our pain point was that even as an alcohol consumer, and I'm an alcohol enthusiast myself, if I do not want to consume alcohol, my options were limited to the main 3-4 colas, and that was it. So one view that we had is that can we not have alcoholic drinks that are a little more complex and tasty? And that's actually the reason we got into this space. That when I don't want to drink, can I just have more options apart from Coke, Pepsi, and those 3-4 products?
Eren, do you have anything to add on the Gen Z and millennials, and whether they're sort of a driving force behind this?
I mean, I think my panelists they covered everything like really super well. I wouldn't add anything to that, but I just wanted to make a comparison. Maybe 20 years ago, this is like talk being a vegan or a vegetarian and trying to look for a vegan or vegetarian restaurant, and you will only have like, salads or potato. But now, I mean, you have Madison Square Park in New York. It's a Michelin star restaurant and only plant-based. So, I mean, I just wanted to add this, and because the drive is so big, I think the industry is adapting at the moment.
I mean, it's really exciting. Who would have thought that you could go around Soho and see so many dessert shops open till midnight? They're all part of the same trend towards diversity and difference and experience, and you shouldn't see those as being separate, but all part of that same movement, along with vegan food and escape rooms and all of those things. They all go hand in hand.
We sort of touched on, obviously, age demographics. Are there any other markets where we're seeing low and no alcohol drinks particularly taking off? Laura, perhaps you want to.
Yeah, France is probably the biggest moving market at the moment in Europe. So they're all getting very excited about it. And you would have seen some of that Vin Expo this week. And there's all the vineyards are racing to produce alcohol-free wines, which I think is fascinating. And they report that demand has gone up hugely from their suppliers over the last year. So I think that's really interesting. But it's also worth noting this is a global phenomenon. So, you know, alcohol drinking in Japan falls off a cliff in 2030. All key markets are showing a receptiveness to alcohol-free drinks because everywhere is reducing. I suspect the UK led the way because that was quite a marked change because we were, you know, a big drinking nation, and that shift was quite substantial.
Irem, did you want to comment on that?
And also, I mean, at the moment, you know, we have 10 key markets, and this is the 70% of the global consumption. And to add on the markets that Laura mentioned, US is a very big market, but also depending on the markets where we see differences are, like in UK, like no alcohol, or in Germany, no alcohol is leading, but in in US, low alcohol is leading. And also Nordics are very important markets. Sweden, Finland, Norway, there are tenders now for no and low alcohol products. So Spain is also very dynamic. Spain at the moment is led by no alcohol beer, but no alcohol wine is increasing as well.
And so how are these consumer habits shaping the low and no alcohol market and the products that we see on the shelves? Dan, perhaps you want to.
Sorry, just repeat that last bit again.
Sorry, have myself on mute. How are these consumer habits shaping the low and no alcohol market and the products that we see on shelves?
I think there's, I mean, as with all things in this category, there are loads of different trends which are moving around, and it's not as simple as saying it's this or that. I've seen a few questions in the chat as well that are kind of talking about this as well. If we talk about non-alc being in waves, you know, that started right back with, I'll just talk about spirits because that's where I'm most comfortable. But with Ben Branson back in 2015 launching Seedlip, I mean, we probably wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation if it wasn't for Ben. So hats off for Ben, first of all, and also for the amazing work he's doing on raising awareness of autism and ADHD within the drinks industry. So that was kind of the first wave of things launching. We've now seen a load of bigger brands, you know, your Gordons, your Captain Morgans, etc., launching what we would call trademark brands, which is taking a well-known brand and then launching a non-alcoholic version of it. And they're very clearly aimed at people who, I want gin, but I don't want the alcohol. And I think that's kind of wave two. I think where we sit, as well as brands such as, you know, Three Spirit or Bativo or any number of other things, is in this like third wave of things that are probably slightly harder to understand. I've got a bottle of Forest behind me, and it doesn't anywhere on it really tell you what it is. It tells you it's called Forest, but that doesn't really tell you what it's going to taste like. It might call out some botanicals. So we talk about saffron, orange blossom, vanilla, but we then need to do a bit of work with taking people along the journey of how to use it. But we kind of feel like the consumers are ready for that now. Laura was talking about lots of younger people coming into the category. They won't have the reference point if they're teetotal, of having, you know, gin on the label. It doesn't mean anything to them. And what they're more looking for is a drink that fits into an occasion. So we know that people drink Everleaf as an aperitif, so we talk about aperitivo culture a lot, but we mainly talk about flavors that are in it, not the things that aren't in it, if that makes sense. So I think for us, that's the kind of a new subcategory of non-alc, which I guess if you pop into Club Soda on Drury Lane, you'll see lots of different other ways of organizing things. But yeah, it's a moving feast, lots of different trends.
Right.
And welcome to Laura's cat as well, who's just joined the call.
So perhaps we'll move on from the sort of discussion around consumer trends into some of the challenges and opportunities that the drinks industry faces in light of these shifts. So I guess that last point that you just made, Dan, leads nicely on to do you think that there are enough products on the market to satisfy the demand that's in place right now?
I don't think there are enough good products on the market to satisfy the demand. I think there are a lot of poor products. Just looking at Eric Schultz's question around, things that are simple juices with better marketing. I'm not going to name any brands, it's inappropriate, but I think there has been a bit of a gold rush into this category of people thinking if you come up with a smart label and a snappy phrase, then you can start printing some money. Consumers are way too sophisticated for that already, and they're only going to get more sophisticated. So you've got to offer fair value. You've got to use great quality ingredients. You've got to do things carefully and be really aware of what needs you're answering, because otherwise, yes, you probably do run the risk of coming off as being a juice that sits on the menu with lots of marketing.
I'd say it's also interesting how the other things that tie into consumers' behaviours in this is around calories, sugar content. The second most popular question we get asked after, generally at the moment, is there such a thing as a decent red wine, is about the levels of sugar. And I think that's a really good pointer to the fact that this is a market that's taking share from the soft drinks industry. And you can see that Dr. Pepper invested in Athletic Brewing, AG Bar have invested in an alcohol-free brand as well. They're definitely keeping an eye on this, and they're definitely seeing it as a different segmentation than just soft drinks. I mean, beer is fascinating because once you've taken alcohol out of beer, it's one of the healthiest things that you can drink. It's ridiculous. It's, low calorie, no added ingredients, no sugar, and rehydrating. So suddenly it's a very different proposition. And I think the different segments will begin to find their own ground over time. But it's not just it's not just about whether there's enough products. It's about the occasions that people want to drink the products, and it's the questions they're asking. And for the big brands that are now putting out brand extensions, they've never been able to talk about health before because they've only sold alcohol. It is very different selling alcohol-free drinks, and I think they'll only get so far unless they get to understand the market and actually learn to love their products as well.
I of course won't name any brands, but I do think we need more products that actually taste a lot better, because I think what has happened with a few people that I know even from experience is that they bought something that sounded really, really exciting, and when they've consumed it, they're like, it's nothing what I'm expecting. And I think that is going to happen for some time. But I really like Dan's idea where it's not a replica of spirit, and it's just something very different, and you're not leading with a non-alcoholic gin or a cocktail or whatever. I think that's a very good idea for more products to come up.
And I will just add about from the wine aspect. Yes, there are more and more products available. If you compare it like 4 or 5 years ago, only dealcoholized wines or non-alcoholic wines were based on grape must, or dealcoholized but very much sugary. And there was a question also on the chat panel I was trying to in the meantime answer about the sugar level. Now we see that this is changing, but still there are not enough options available in that wine segment of it, because I think we are gonna get there. But I think what we will see in 4 or 5 years, different types of wines. Like now what we have is like, best sellers are sparkling wines because it's easier to make it, because you can a little bit compensate the loss of alcohol with the carbonization. So that's why the beer sells really well, because less alcohol and carbonization. But with the wine, we need to see like Pinots from Burgundy, or Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough, or Sauvignon Blanc from France. So these diversity is not happening yet. And once it happens, I think it will appeal to wine consumers. But on the other hand, from non-wine consumers, for soft drink consumers, I think there's very good availability, so many alternative drinks. But again, wine is very difficult. I'm not going to go into detail now, but if we talk about a little bit of the technology and winemaking aspect of it, I would like to compare it with beer and cocktails as well, spirits.
Thanks, Irem. So when developing and marketing a product, this is something that I think you touched on, Dan. Can producers approach no and low in the same way as alcohol? Is it completely different? Are there sort of overlaps? And Dan, do you want to speak to that a bit more?
Yeah, I think again, there's no standard answer here. I think one thing I would start with is that making a no or low alcohol product is not as easy as everyone thinks it is. If you wanted to make something easy in the drinks industry, you're probably better off making gin. Because alcohol is a great extractor and preservative for flavors. So I was talking to Nick Bodkins from Bhasin recently, and I steal loads of his stuff. So I just wanted to call out that I'm stealing his phrase here. But when you go into a coffee shop and you ask for a decaf coffee, even though additional process in making that coffee, you don't get charged more, but you definitely don't get charged less. So I think we need to be more proud as an industry about making really good products and charging the right amount for them. You know, a bottle of Everleaf is retailing for £20 for a 50 cl bottle. You could work that out per litre and buy a reasonable price Scotch, but that's not what the point that we're trying to make here is compare. You know, it's got alcohol in, so it should cost more. It's not got alcohol in, so it should cost less. To make something that's as nuanced, sophisticated, you know, powerful in flavor as Everleaf or other brands takes a lot of R&D. It takes a lot of know-how in terms of the ingredients that go into it, and also the actual cost of the ingredients is quite high. So there's a spectrum of making things more or less expensive. We recently worked with a UK supermarket for a few years. One of the first conversations we had with them was, would you make something own label for us? And we said no. And inevitably, after 18 months, they've now made something that looks and feels a bit like Everleaf, but tastes like burning tires. So you get what you pay for here, folks, as you do in all categories. So yes, you can make something non-alcoholic that's very cheap, or you can spend some more money on it and get something that actually rewards and satisfies what you're looking for.
But it's the same as alcohol, isn't it? There needs to be something at every price point for everybody. The question about price does come up a lot. And it's a really difficult one because ultimately, I know people might not like to hear this, but we put a high value on alcohol, which is actually the free byproduct of the process that an alcoholic drink's gone through. So we're actually putting a high value on something that is both free and is basically a mild poison. So so we're trying to counteract something that actually generally isn't true about alcohol when we're thinking about pricing of alcohol free. But the consumer, you know, an alcohol-free consumer is less likely to drink as many drinks in the evening as an alcohol consumer. As I always say, because this is my modus operandi, more likely to eat dessert though, so that's good. You still get money out of them. And don't forget, people invest a lot of money in their health. You know, you've probably got drawers full of supplements and gym memberships, and you've probably bought, you know, maybe organic kale, and, you know, you might have bought the new Zoe good gut bacteria shakes. We spend lots of money on our health, even on products we don't necessarily need. Alcohol-free fits into a health-making decision, not just a drink and occasion-making decision. And therefore, people will make a decision, even if something's a higher price, because it fits into where they are with their health. And it's also social inclusion in a bottle. Don't underestimate how important that is, right? People want to feel included, don't want to feel like they're being differented or othered. And that has also got a high value.
Aneesh, do you have anything to add to that point?
Just going going by what Dan said, these products are expensive to make, and it's not a cheaper alternative to alcohol. That's not what we're trying to build at all. In India, so Svami in India is priced a little above Schweppes. That would be the standard benchmark globally. And a lot of people would ask us that, hey, you're new and you're Indian, so why are you more expensive than Schweppes? And we had to explain that, but we don't have that scale and we're using all natural stuff. So I think for India, the market's matured a little bit, and people do understand that you're not necessarily going to pay lesser because it's non-alcoholic. And that's actually something that's happening in the food space as well. A vegetarian tasting course at a lot of places can be the same price as non-vegetarian tasting course for dinner. But there was a time when people would expect it to be much cheaper. So just because there's no alcohol in it doesn't mean it cannot be priced at a premium, because if it's a premium product, it should be priced like that.
And also on the terms of wine, real costs of making a non-alcoholic wine, dealcoholized wine, is higher than making a wine. So with wine, all the aromas and flavors, they happen during the alcoholic fermentation. So if you just choose a product which is based on grape must, you won't have all these aromas and it's going to be sweet. So to make a high quality, dry, dealcoholized wine, you need to have all the fermentation to be completed. And after that, it's prone to another process, which we remove the alcohol. And most of the time, the wineries, they don't have this equipment. If they have it, it's a very expensive investment. Otherwise, they need to ship it to a dealcoholization center. So there they have transportation costs, plus the cost of the dealcoholization. And the more importantly, there's a yield loss between 15 to 30%, depending on the technology you're using. So basically, you can lose up to 30% of your volume. So if you put everything on top, it's going to be much more expensive. And also handling the bottling or packaging of non-alcoholic wine is way more expensive and more costly than normal wine. Yes, and then the other side, obviously, there's a tax exemption. You don't pay alcohol taxes if you are 0.0. But I think this is also going to change. There's new tax regulations also coming to these products. But again, give or take, it is more expensive, and it's to produce it. Yes, we pay less for the taxes, so I think it is fair to say that a dealcoholized wine should be or could be priced at a same price of the alcoholic wine.
Can I add on to that, Laura? Because there's a question from Konstantinos about whether that it's really an area that the wine industry should focus on, or whether it's all just hot air that would disappear. I think there are a couple of things that you need to say. The wine drinking generally is going down. So this isn't even about low or no alcohol. This is about the fact that wine buying amongst younger people is going down, and they're more interested in different types of drinks. So it's worth wine industry looking at that fact for a start. The other is, if you're great at making drinks, why does it matter what the ABV of that drink is? You can produce drinks across all the ABVs. And I have to say that the demand for lower alcohol wine, so around the 6% mark, is something that's coming through at the minute. At Club Soda, we have low as well as no in our shop, and people are asking for lower ABV wines. So I think it would be foolish of an industry not to look at what it's able to produce and diversify with across their production and their facilities and their expertise. The other thing to say is the Middle East market is actually also really hot. Now, that's a market that's never drunk, and it's never drunk alcoholic wine, but they are really interested in a premium product because they're also sick of drinking high sugar fruit juices. There's more disposable income in some of those countries. And so again, there's a new market there that may never have been tapped before. So all the evidence is that this isn't a trend that's going away. It's taken wine longer to probably step up and think about this sector than all the others, but it's definitely a market worth cultivating, developing techniques in. Most of the products on the shelves at Club Soda are not the same product that was in the bottle back in 2017, 2018. Every brand has reiterated and making their products better. And if wine doesn't start, it will certainly be left behind.
Thank you. What can the on-trade do to cater to this rising market and meet consumer expectations?
Keen to take that one if I can. We live and breathe the on-trade. Paul, who founded Everleaf, owns 3 bars in London, so it's very much where the brand was born and what we've learned. So yeah, over the last 5 years, we've learned an enormous amount about what to do in the on-trade. We've put together 5 tips of how to structure menus, which hopefully someone can drop into the chat for me. A link of that if you want to download that. You're very welcome to have that, and that's something we use with our customers. But the highlights, I'll just do the top one, is that it has to be visible. So I want you all to reflect about the number of times you've walked into a bar and ordered something which wasn't on the menu. So just think about that for a little bit. I think you'll all realize that probably never is the answer. So if you click that link in the chat, that's going to take you through to a very short deck, which will teach you how to structure menus. We know that the results can be absolutely transformational. We worked with a customer last January where we had a drink just kind of languishing on the back page of shame. They did 81 bottles in a month in January. This year we had a far more engaging menu right up there and in people's faces, and giving them loads of really good options of having not only non-alcoholic drinks, but adding some alcohol if they wanted to make it lower alcohol. And we sold 561 bottles, so 81 to 561, like a month against month growth. So it's really, really important to get it right. Laura's also dropped a great link into the chat, which is about training on how to describe, merchandise, show, all of those things. So Laura, I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, we launched some training with Drinkware yesterday. It's the first of hopefully lots that we want to be able to produce with different partners. But often we still need to make the business case for selling more low and no. And we know in the UK, venues lose £800 million a year by not upgrading customers from a tap water to something they pay for. There's actually other figures, but that's the one that's most compelling for venues because they know lots of people drink tap water. So it's a really good stat to use. But there is a business case, and you do need to describe that business case to people, and understanding that most people's moderation behaviour means they're not drinking at lunchtime at work anymore, and they're not drinking at the start of the week. So it might even be that venues think about their drinks menu, just like they might have a special menu for lunchtimes, to really highlight the alcohol-free products during parts of the week where people are less likely to be wanting to drink, or may even not absent themselves from going out because they don't want to drink. And I think that's one of the saddest things if people do that. Then you should certainly equalise their offers. So Mother's Day is a really good example coming up. I've had already 10 emails saying that I should take my mum out for Mother's Day and I get a free glass of champagne with the lunch. Well, it's a Sunday and not every mother drinks. And, if you look at Mother's Day cards, the suggestion is that you can only be drunk if you're a mother, to be honest. But, it's about time we began to say it's not acceptable to have a free bottle of booze with every single offer if you're not offering something else alongside it. And then staff training is really, really key. The average age of staff in the UK in the hospitality sector is 25. So they're already receptive to this because they're in that non-drinking experience-led cohort already. But making sure that they understand the products, that they've got favourites, that they know that when somebody asks for something alcohol-free, they don't just tap that cola on a hose, which is the most disappointing experience you could ever have, and instead go, do you know we've got some really lovely alcohol-free cocktails? That will make all the difference as well. It's exciting. 1 in 3 visits to the pub in the UK are now alcohol-free. You would be foolish not to take advantage of that.
And then let's move on to what the latest innovations are in low and no. There's quite a lot of talk around functional drinks. So maybe we could talk about that for a minute, and what's sort of driving that trend. Irem, do you have anything to say?
Yes, actually functional category is getting very big in the terms of no alcohol, and especially in UK, but I'm going to leave the UK part to Laura if she wants to go into detail there. But in BevZero, we are a global company. We have locations in California, South Africa, and Spain, and the services that we offer changes a lot depending on the demographics and the geography. So in US, and we are based in California in Sonoma, we have been working with CBD products even THC and all the other functional beverages for a while, because there is demand. But also on the other hand, the legislations, the legal part allows us to do in California versus in Spain, we are more limited. But I think the consumer is not looking only for no alcohol anymore. As we speak, there's sugar aspect, no sugar, no calories, you know, no carbs, or less calories as possible, and also functional benefit. Like if I'm drinking this drink, what is it bringing to me? You know, maybe helps me to sleep better, or helps me, you know, to feel more relaxed. So that's why there's a big demand, and we have been working on that for a while. But also, again, in the technical parts, there are difficulties. For example, if you do a CBD-based drink based on non-alcoholic wine or non-alcoholic cider, the CBD or THC, it's not soluble in water. The oil is not soluble in water. So to be able to make it soluble, then we need to turn it into an emulsion, which we can blend into the water. So again, I'll go back to the aspect of the price. This is not an easy process. And then now the consumer knows it, and the consumer of functional beverages, I think they are willing to pay the price because of the additional benefits. But obviously, on the other hand, I'm going to be always the devil's advocate. In the functional beverages, there is a very strong marketing as well. And what is needed, I think, very transparent labels, back labels, to see exactly what is in there, and is it all marketing, or is it really functional and it's good for me?
Could I just, oh, go on, Laura, you first.
No, you go.
I just on benefits, I'm always a bit circumspect on this one. There are lots of plants in Everleaf that we could claim incredible benefits for. To give one example, we use a French flower called Immortelle, which if you ever go into a L'Occitane en Provence shop, they will tell you is a miraculous anti-aging flower. I'm actually 65, so you can judge whether it's working on me or not. But I think lots of brands are making claims which are, let's say, hard to prove. And I think the smartest way of making them is doing it through their consumers. So I'll hand over to Laura. I think it's got a cracking example here.
I was going to say, I thought you'd been using the tune-up on Zoom to make it look good. So, you
You're
know.
so kind.
I think we know with functional claims, it doesn't always matter if they're true or not in terms of consumer behavior. And certainly the consumer sometimes expects a bigger impact from a functional product than the reality that comes. But there's some interesting things to note. Our biggest selling spirit next to Everleaf is 3 Spirit. It's a functional, it promises, actually it's very, I think it's quite modest in its promises. It's a livener, a social elixir, and nightcap. And I'm a big fan of the nightcap. It really does help you sleep. But it speaks to occasion, and it speaks to the general feeling you should have, and 3 stages of an evening. And I think that works particularly well. People buy those functional brands a bit like they buy alcohol. They don't always want to try before they buy, particularly around CBD. They'll just pick it up and take it. But what it does do is it counters that feeling of loss aversion from not drinking, because everyone knows that alcohol gives you some physiological impact, and people are looking to at least replicate that in some way, even if it's with caffeine, L-theanine, which is in tea, which also calms you. They know about some of these things, and they really are interested in having something that has got added value to counteract that loss aversion. So they are big sellers. They are really popular. GABA spirits, which is, you know, ultimately what 3 Spirit is, but presented a different way, where a spirit stimulates your GABA receptors like your first drink. They're a little bit harder to sell because most people don't know what a GABA receptor is, but you can buy foods and also specially grown teas that will stimulate your GABA receptors. They're not wholly new, but they promise something very exciting that people don't always necessarily get. But again, they fly off the shelves. We can't keep Centure on the shelves. It sells out very quickly because the publicity it's had. So whether or not you think they are effective or not, they are certainly effective in terms of the eyes of the consumer for dealing with loss aversion. And I think it will be a growing market. And sometimes it might just be additional caffeine or other things in a product, but they do have a place. And younger consumers will be slightly more interested in some of those, I think.
Aneesh, is functional drinks big in India, or is there another innovation that's sort of taking off over there?
No, honestly, nothing here on functional, nothing at all. And we stay away from any of that kind of marketing. Again, we're in India, it's very easy to add like a drop of ashwagandha or one of our herbs and, claim mindfulness and stuff like that. But we would not, Swami as a company will not do that. It's very easy to do that here, but we're not mixing this with functional at all.
So I'm quite conscious that we're sort of running low on time now, and we've got some brilliant questions in the chat that I want to get to, but maybe I could ask each of you for one takeaway on what is the next big thing, or the most important thing, or a key takeaway from today that you'd like to share, and hopefully just a little nugget, because I want to make sure we get through this Q&A. I'll start with you, Laura.
Very quiet, Laura.
Yeah, definitely look at functional. I think there's a lot more space to explore there in terms of experimentation. Wine is our biggest growth category in London and the UK at the moment, and that leads you back to very neatly to the fact that taste is the biggest driver of that growth, because people have been very disappointed by wine. They're now finding wine they like, and they're buying again and again because they like the taste. So the other thing to say in the growth of the market is taste will win out ultimately with consumers. And so those products that do taste really good would be the ones that you want to see. But yeah, definitely wine and functional. And then I'd also say low. So the half strength spirits. So those that come in at around 20%, and wines at 6%. And then in the UK in particular, because the tax bands have changed, mid-strength beers, I think you're going to see a lot more of. So those table beers under 3.5%. So all of those have got big growth targets, I think, or growth opportunities.
Irem?
Actually, I'm gonna echo Laura here, because I was just gonna mention the low alcohol drinks and low alcohol wine. I think it's gonna get very big because of, again, the tax purposes, but also the climate change, the global warming, because the alcohol levels are increasing year after year. And again, in some countries, you are allowed to add water to lower the alcohol, in US, in Australia, but in Europe not. So with the dealcoholization, you can lower the alcohol. And that's why we see this demand from the producers a lot, and also going low to cater the switchers and the blenders types of consumers. I think, yeah. And also one more thing that I would like to add, because I know there's a big audience of wine connoisseurs here, or students. Wine industry shouldn't see this movement or category as a disruption. They should see it as an opportunity, because wine consumption, unfortunately, it's decreasing year after year. And to make a non-alcoholic wine, dealcoholized wine, or even non-alcoholic vermouth or non-alcoholic rum, you need to sell wine. I'm talking about like producers now. So they cannot sell the most of the wines that they produce, especially in the entry level. In Europe, there's the wine lake. So those products, those unsold wines, can be dedicated to another category, dealcoholized wine, or as an ingredient in dealcoholized spirits or vermouth. So I think wine producers can either fight this, or they can just embrace and join and take it as an opportunity.
Thank you. Aneesh?
I think my learning is that I think there's scope for non-alcoholic wines to actually have some cult brands in the future, which has happened with wines, of course, but I think if terroir characteristics and flavors can be maintained, I think there's so much scope for actual cult brands to be built in that space.
Thank you. And Dan, do you have a really quick one?
Yeah, I'll keep it really short. So my ask to everyone is, judge your non-alcoholic spirits by the criteria of, is it as good as anything else on your back bar? So if it isn't, you shouldn't be listing it, and use it in the same way. So we've seen lots of people using Everleaf in low ABV drinks, which is fine with us. It's a great flavor, so why not? I'm going to sneak in one more if I can. If you're interested, if you're in the UK and interested in winning a trip to Iceland, we're just about to launch our spritz competition. So I'll drop a link into the chat. Not global, unfortunately, this year, but we will make it global next year. So have a look and see if you want to enter. It'd be great to see some drinks.
Excellent. So I'll see if I can get through a couple of these questions in the Q&A quickly. I think we've still got a little bit of time. So Andrew Parsons asks, are people looking for the same flavour as the alcoholic equivalent in a low and no, or are they happy to just have a great tasting product? And Aneesh, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so I'll answer that because so apart from our mixer range, RTD, the non-alcoholic range is a non-alcoholic rum and cola, and a non-alcoholic gin and tonic, and a non-alcoholic pink gin and tonic. By the way, all products have won IWSC medals higher than Gordon Zero and or a lot of the bigger brands. And we actually went with the idea that let the flavor come out and let it replicate the flavor of rum and cola or a gin and tonic. And it was a confusing situation that time, because one of the questions was that if someone's never tasted this product, how will they even know if it's authentic, or how would that be? But we took that bet, and I think it's worked out better for us, because otherwise it would just seem like a food juice or something else. So I think the stage that we are in, at least in India, I'd rather give that proposition because the audience may not be evolved enough to just think of something like Everleaf, for example.
Thank you. Let me see. We've got a question here from Konstantinos Privatas, and he asks whether the customers that choose these products truly represent an important segment of the market. Is it all just social media fuzz? And is it something that the alcohol business should be focusing on?
Yeah, I think I touched on that a bit before. I don't think it is fuzz. It is absolutely that all of the data I've seen, even from the big out companies, shows their projections are that alcohol usage will continue to go down. So I mean, I see a future where we're just interested in drinks, and some of them will have a high ABV, and some of them will have a lower ABV, and some of them will have no ABV. But the strength of the drink in your glass will be less important to all sorts of occasions, and people will make drinks across the spectrum of strengths. And that's what I see happening, because some people will drink sometimes and occasionally, and some people want to reduce what they drink. So you shouldn't see it as so binary as not drinkers and drinkers. It's about seeing that people want to drink different times, different occasions, and with different people, different types of drinks, depending on lots of other considerations, largely around their health.
Thank you. I think we're probably out of time, aren't we, Ben? You're going to, or can we squeeze one more in?
Go on, go for one more.
I have to choose well.
Can I answer Amanda's one?
Yeah, I just saw that one. Yeah. Do you want me to
honestly,
read it out?
So
I'm not sure people can see.
Would love thoughts on Lucky Saints beer going into a supermarket meal deal. This made my week. Like, as Laura said, beer without alcohol is the best drink ever. So the more people who can get delicious non-alc drinks into their hands in whatever scenario is all good for me. So love it. Absolutely love it.
Absolutely, and it's been a lot more popular, that sort of meal deal, and buying a beer, alcohol-free beer at lunchtime in mainland Europe anyway. So yeah, it's good.
And on that note, I think just to keep things running, I will call a pause there. But can I just thank everyone for watching globally? You will get a feedback poll, which will come up on your screen in a moment. Please do take a moment to fill that in. That would be great for us. Most importantly, if you can, if you're still there, I'm already seeing them. Thanks. Those hands up, please do. Those hands up and appreciation for what we've seen from Aneesh, Laura W, Irem and Daniel for sharing their insights to us. And of course, thank you, Laura R, for chairing and putting together. This has been incredibly interesting to me and to all of us. I'm a non-drinker of 17 years. I've got a 16-year-old son who's incredibly healthy, runs for county, shows no interest at the moment for the idea of alcoholic drinks. I've got 2 young daughters that are following hot on his heels. But the idea that we can go out and have more opportunities than Coke, Pepsi, orange and lemonade is truly exciting to think about. The recording of the session will be emailed to everyone, as well as being available to watch on our WSET Events Hub on YouTube, and you can catch up on all our other previous events, and of course, there will be recordings of our future ones. And finally, to find out more and sign up for our qualifications, please visit our Where to Study page at wsetglobal.com. It's been a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.